All right, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be really digging into habits.
Ooh,
Yeah,
habits.
those things that are like sometimes super helpful, sometimes so frustrating, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Why are they so hard to break? And like, how do our brains actually work when it comes to habits? You sent over some fascinating research about this whole neuroscience of habit thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting
So
stuff.
let's just get right into it.
Okay, so like one of the sources you sent over, it kind of goes deeper into this whole habit loop idea, It's not just like the trigger behavior reward thing we always hear about.
Oh, really? I always thought that was kind of like that was it.
Well, this one's saying there's like this whole craving element
Too.
too. Yeah, like it's not just that the trigger leads to the behavior and then you get the reward, but that the trigger makes you actually crave the reward, which then like fuels that whole behavior.
Oh, okay. So it's like, I don't know, if I see a commercial for a big juicy burger,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just that I remember, oh, I like burgers. It's that I'm like, ooh, I want that burger. I want that satisfaction.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you're craving that specific burger and that feeling you're going to get from it. That's what really drives the habit loop.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But like, how does that craving actually happen in our brains? Like, is it just a feeling or is there something more going on?
Well, that's where the whole neuroscience part comes in.
Yeah.
Like, remember that saying, neurons that fire together, wire together?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's not just like a cute little phrase. It's actually like how habits get physically put into our brains.
Really?
Yeah. So every time you experience that craving and you do that habit, those connections in your brain get stronger, the ones associated with that specific habit.
So it's like working out a muscle, but it's like a brain muscle, right?
Yeah.
For a specific action.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And here's what's even cooler. Those cravings, they involve these things called neurotransmitters.
Neuro what?
Neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
Like dopamine.
Oh, dopamine. Yeah, I've heard of that.
So like when you're thinking about that reward, your brain releases dopamine, and that feeling you get from that anticipation, that's what makes you want to do the habit.
Oh, so it's not even the reward itself. It's like the wanting it beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes those bad habits so hard to break.
Yeah.
Your brain's like trained to expect that dopamine rush. And when you try to not do the habit, you get what's called a reward prediction error.
You said that earlier.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
So basically, your brain's like expecting a certain amount of reward based on what's happened before. And when you don't get it, like if you don't eat that ice cream, you usually, your brain's like, wait, where's my dopamine?
Right.
And then your dopamine levels drop and you might feel kind of bad,
Ugh.
like restless or irritable, maybe even have trouble sleeping.
That's crazy. So it's not just about willpower then. It's like actual stuff happening in my brain.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is where that research you sent gets really interesting. One study found that this reward prediction error can be even stronger if you've been doing the habit for a long time.
Oh, that makes sense. Like the longer you've been wired for that reward, the more your brain freaks out when it doesn't get it.
Yeah, exactly. And get this, different parts of your brain are actually in charge of different parts of the habit loop.
No way. Like what? Tell me.
So, like your prefrontal cortex, that's the part that helps you make decisions and control yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That part's working extra hard when you're first starting a new habit.
So that's when I'm really trying to make those good choices, huh?
Yeah, but then as that habit becomes more like automatic, another part of your brain takes over. It's called the basal ganglia, and it's all about those automatic behaviors, and it uses less energy for your brain to do it that way.
Oh, so that's why it's so much effort at first.
Yeah,
Like, I'm actually using more brain power
exactly.
to try to build those new pathways.
But then once it's a habit, it's like easier on your brain
Right.
because the basal ganglia's got it.
But doesn't that make it even harder to break a bad habit then? Like if it's already on autopilot,
Right.
how do you even start to change that?
That's where it gets tricky. But it's super important to understand this because it means that breaking a bad habit isn't just about being strong. It's about retraining your brain.
Okay, so if we're like fighting against these pathways in our brain and these dopamine cravings,
Yeah.
is there any hope? Like how do we even start to change things?
Well, the good news is that the research you sent also talks about how to use this knowledge to actually help us.
Oh, good.
Like, it's not about fighting our brains. It's about working with them.
Okay, I like that idea. What are some of the things it says?
Well, one thing that people talk about a lot is habit replacement.
Habit replacement.
Yeah, so instead of trying to just stop a bad habit completely, which can cause that big dopamine drop we were talking about,
Right.
you try to replace it with a good habit that uses the same trigger and gives you a similar reward.
Okay, so like if I always want chips when I get home from work,
Yeah.
I can try having, like, almonds or carrots ready instead.
Exactly. You're still getting that crunchy, salty snack, but it's way healthier for you.
Right, right. But what if the healthy thing just isn't as satisfying?
Well, that's where you got to experiment and find things you actually like. It might take a few tries to find what works, but the goal is to make the new habit something you enjoy.
So it's not about forcing myself to eat celery if I hate it. It's about finding healthy things I actually want to eat.
Exactly. And your research even talk about how the way you think about your choices can affect how well you do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like instead of saying, I can't eat cookies anymore,
Right.
try saying something positive like, I'm choosing to eat fruit because it's good for me.
I'm choosing to nourish my body.
Yeah, exactly. That little change in how you talk about it can actually make a big difference in how your brain sees it.
I like that. It's like, it's not about taking something away. It's about giving myself something good.
Right. And that actually leads to another cool idea from your research, the friction factor.
The friction factor. Okay, tell me about that. What is that?
So it basically means how hard or easy it is to do a new habit.
Okay.
So like the easier and more fun a habit is, the more likely you are to stick with it.
Okay, so like, if I want to start working out,
Yeah,
it's better to choose something I actually enjoy than something I hate.
exactly. Like if you hate running on the treadmill, don't do it. Find something you love, like
Yeah.
dancing or swimming or hiking. That way it feels good, not like a chore.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Uh,
But what if there are like a bunch of bad habits I want to change? Where do I even begin?
That's a great question. And that's where this other idea comes in, the Pareto principle. Have you heard of
Oh,
that?
yeah, the 80-20 rule.
You got it. And when it comes to habits, it means you should focus on the few bad habits that are causing the most problems.
So instead of trying to change everything at once,
Yeah.
I should pick like the biggest ones that are really dragging me down.
Exactly. Like maybe it's snacking late at night that's messing up your sleep. Or maybe it's being on your phone all the time that makes you feel anxious.
Hmm.
By focusing on those big ones, you can make a big difference without feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think we try to change everything at once and then we just burn out.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of feeling overwhelmed, your research also talked about how stress affects our habits.
Oh, stress. Yeah, that's a big one for me. What did it say about stress?
Well, one really interesting thing was that how you think about stress might actually be more important than the stressful thing itself.
Wait, what? So like how I think about being stressed matters more than the actual thing that's making me stressed.
Yeah, that's what the research says.
Wow, that's wild. But it kind of makes sense. Like if I can learn to deal with stress better, maybe it won't mess up my habits as much.
Exactly. And that brings us to another big idea from your research, mindset.
Mindset. Okay, tell me more about that.
So basically, your sources are saying that real change isn't just about changing what you do, but also changing how you see yourself.
So like if I want to be healthier, it's not enough to just eat healthy and exercise.
Yeah.
I have to actually believe that I'm a healthy person.
Exactly. It's about believing you can change and seeing yourself as someone who already has those healthy habits.
That's powerful. It's not just checking things off a list. It's like becoming that person.
Yeah, it's like taking on a new role with new habits to go with it.
I like that analogy.
And as you start acting like that new person, it makes those good habits even stronger in your brain.
Wow. Okay, so we've got the habit loop with that craving thing, the brain stuff with neurons connecting, habit replacement, making things easy, focusing on the big habits, and now mindset. That's a lot.
It is. But the main takeaway is that real change has lots of parts. You need to understand your brain, be willing to try new things, and believe in yourself.
Absolutely. This is so interesting, and I feel like we're just getting started.
Oh, we are. There's so much more to talk about.
I'm ready to keep diving in.
Okay, let's do it.
But first, maybe we take a minute to think about what we've learned so far.
That's a good idea.
What are some of the things that really stood out to you? For me, I think the biggest thing is that breaking bad habits isn't about being perfect or blaming yourself. It's about understanding how your brain works and using that to make real change. And being patient with yourself, finding what works for you, and believing that you can change.
I love that. That's a great way to put it.
And what's cool is that this stuff about habits doesn't just apply to things like eating or exercise.
Right.
It's about everything, like relationships, money, work, how we grow as people.
Exactly. It's about how we can make our lives better in all sorts of ways.
Okay, this is getting me really excited.
Me too. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's dive a little deeper into some of the actual strategies and techniques that can help us use all this knowledge.
All right, sounds good to me. Let's keep going.
Okay, let's do it. So we were talking about those strategies for habit change, and there was one study you sent over that really caught my eye.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it actually tested out different methods to see what really worked for breaking bad habits.
Oh, that's the one I was really excited about. It wasn't just theory. They actually tried it out.
Exactly. And you know what they found? One of the most effective things was actually pretty simple.
Oh, really? Let's hear it.
Habit tracking.
Hmm. You mean like writing down all the habits I'm trying to change?
Yeah, exactly. Just keeping track of your behavior can make you more aware of it,
Right.
and it helps you be more accountable for your choices.
I guess that makes sense. Like, if I know I have to write down every time I grab a bag of chips,
Yeah.
I might actually stop and think before I do it.
Right. And the research shows that tracking your habits like this can help you figure out your triggers, too.
Triggers, oh, you mean the things that start the whole habit loop?
Exactly. By tracking your habits, you can start to see patterns, like maybe you always reach for those chips when you're stressed.
Oh, or like when it's a certain time of day?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I totally get the after dinner munchies. It's like clockwork.
There you go. So, see, you've identified the trigger that time of day, and now you can come up with a plan to break that habit loop.
Okay, so instead of going straight for the snacks after dinner, I
Right.
could, like, go for a walk or call a friend.
Exactly. Or have something healthy already prepared, like herbal tea or some fruit. The key is to be ready so the trigger doesn't catch you off guard.
So it's like know your enemy, right? Once you know what triggers the habit, you can figure out how to fight it.
Exactly. And speaking of planning your attack, one of your sources also talked about setting realistic goals.
Oh, yeah, that's so important. We always try to do too much too fast.
Right. It's much better to make small changes over time.
So instead of trying to become a marathon runner right away,
Yeah.
I should maybe aim for a 20-minute walk a few times a week.
Exactly. Those small wins will keep you motivated to keep going.
Yeah,
And remember, you want to make the new habit easy and enjoyable so it doesn't feel like a chore.
it's like building a house, right? You start with a strong base and slowly add more.
Yeah. I like that analogy. And as you start seeing those small successes, it can really boost your confidence.
Totally. It makes the whole thing feel less scary.
Absolutely. And you know what else can help? Your imagination.
Wait, really? Imagination? How does that help with habits?
Well, one study you shared said that if you visualize yourself doing the habit successfully,
Hmm.
it can actually strengthen the connections in your brain for that habit.
Whoa, hold on. So just by imagining myself going for a run every morning,
Yeah.
I can actually make it more likely that I'll do it.
That sounds kind of crazy.
It does.
But that's what the research says. It's like giving your brain a practice run.
That's so cool, like mental rehearsal for real life.
Exactly. It works because our brains don't always know the difference between real and imagined experiences.
So it's like tricking my brain into thinking I've already done it.
Yeah. So if you want to start meditating every morning, spend a few minutes each night picturing yourself doing it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Imagine all the details, like how the cushion feels, the sound of your breath, the feeling of calm.
Wow, I'm definitely going to try that. It sounds so simple but powerful.
And it goes great with the other things we talked about, like tracking your habits and setting small goals.
It's like having a whole toolkit for making real change.
Exactly. And speaking of change, remember that it's a journey, not a race. You're going to have slip-ups along the way.
Yeah, that's true. One of the articles you sent said to be kind to yourself when you mess up.
Oh, yeah, that self-compassion thing is so important.
Right, because those slip-ups can teach us something.
Exactly. They're not failures, they're just feedback.
So instead of getting mad at myself for eating a cookie,
Yeah.
I could try to figure out what made me want it and what I could do differently next time.
Exactly. Maybe have a healthier snack on hand, or try a mindfulness exercise to help you deal with the craving. The point is to see those slip-ups as information, not defeats.
That takes the pressure off. It makes it okay to experiment and try different things.
Right. And speaking of trying different things, it's important to find what works for you personally.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're all different.
Exactly. There's no one right way to change your habits. It's about finding what fits your life and makes you feel good.
So, like, if the thought of tracking my habits in a spreadsheet sounds awful,
Mm-hmm.
I can use an app or just write it down on my phone.
Exactly. Or maybe you need someone to help keep you accountable, like a friend or a group.
Oh, yeah, having someone to share my goals with makes a big difference for me.
It's like having your own personal cheerleader.
I love that. So we've got the habit loop, the brain stuff, mindset, tracking, and now this idea of finding what works for me. It's really starting to come together.
It is. And you know, there's one more piece of the puzzle we should talk about. Your environment.
Environment, you mean like my actual surroundings?
Exactly. One of your sources called it the invisible hand that shapes our behavior.
Interesting.
It's saying that we're constantly being influenced by the things around us, and those things can either help or hurt our habits.
Okay, so like if I'm trying to avoid sugar, it's probably not a good idea to have a candy bowl on my desk.
Right. If you're surrounded by temptations, it's going to be way harder to resist. But if you put things around you that support your goals,
Yeah.
like healthy snacks, workout clothes, or a calm space for meditation,
Oh, that makes sense.
it'll make it easier to stay on track.
It's like my environment is always sending me messages, and I need to make sure they're the right messages.
Exactly. And it's not just about the physical things, it's about the people you spend time with too.
Oh, yeah. My friends definitely have an impact on my habits.
One of your sources even said that habits are contagious. Like, we tend to pick up the habits of the people we're around the most.
So if all my friends are healthy, I'm more likely to be healthy too.
It's possible. And the opposite is true too. If your friends have unhealthy habits, it might be harder for you to make healthy choices.
It's like they're pulling me in one direction or the other.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about judging your friends. It's about being aware of their influence and making choices that create the right environment for you.
So if I want to start a new habit, it might help to find people who already do that habit.
That's a great idea. It's like having a team to support you.
Yeah, it makes it feel less overwhelming.
It does. So think about all the things we've talked about: the habit loop, mindset, environment, finding what works for you. It's all about understanding the science and using it to create real, lasting change.
It really feels like I have a whole new understanding of how this works.
That's great to hear. And remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about progress.
That's a good reminder. I
Yeah.
feel so much more optimistic about actually changing my habits now.
That's fantastic. And before we move on, there's one more thing I want to emphasize.
Oh, what's that?
Don't forget to celebrate your wins.
You mean celebrate when I do something good?
Exactly. It's easy to get caught up in the hard parts and forget to appreciate how far you've come.
It's true, we're always focused on what we haven't done yet.
But celebrating your successes, even the small ones, can actually make the new habit stronger in your brain.
So if I manage to not eat that cookie,
Yeah,
I should actually acknowledge that and give myself a little pat on the back.
absolutely. Or do something nice for yourself, like take a relaxing bath or read a good book. Make it something meaningful that reinforces those good feelings about the new habit.
I love that. It's not about rewarding myself with bad things, it's about making the whole journey more enjoyable.
Exactly. And speaking of enjoying things, I think it's time to give you, our listener, a chance to think about everything we've talked about.
Yeah, this has been a lot of information.
It has, but it's all really fascinating stuff.
It is. And thank you, dear listener, for sending us these awesome sources. They've given us so much to talk about.
Absolutely. We're so glad you're here with us on this deep dive.
And remember, this is just the start. The real magic happens when you use this knowledge to make changes in your own life.
So what's one little habit you're thinking about changing after all this?
That's a good question. We'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah, share your thoughts in the comments or send us a message.
We always love hearing from you.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those habits moving in the right direction.
Man, we have really gone deep on habits today.
We have so many fascinating things to learn about them.
It's amazing how much is going on in our brains without us even realizing it.
It really is. And, as we wrap things up here,
Yeah.
there's one more concept from your research that I wanted to mention. It's the idea of keystone habits.
Keystone habits. I don't think we've talked about those yet. What are they?
Well, one of your sources said that keystone habits are these habits that kind of have a ripple effect.
A ripple effect.
Yeah, like they make positive changes in other areas of your life.
Okay, now I'm really curious. Give me an example.
Okay, think about exercising regularly.
All right.
It's not just about getting physically fit, right?
Oh, definitely not. Like
Oh.
when I exercise, I have more energy.
Hmm.
I sleep better. I'm less stressed. I even eat better.
Exactly. So, see, in that case, exercise is like a keystone habit because it makes all these other good things happen too.
Wow, that's so cool. It's like one good habit leads to a bunch of other good habits.
Yeah, like a domino effect.
I like that. So how do we figure out what our own keystone habits are?
Well, that takes a bit of thinking about yourself and what's important to you.
Okay.
Like, what habits have made the biggest positive impact on your life before? Or think about the areas where you want to improve the most.
Okay, so like if I'm really bad at procrastinating
Yeah,
and I want to be more productive, I should look for a habit that could help with that.
exactly. Maybe something simple like making your bed every morning.
Wait, making my bed. Seriously.
Yeah.
How would that help me get more work done?
Well, some research shows that even small accomplishments like that can give you a sense of momentum for the whole day.
Really?
Yeah, it's like starting off on the right foot, feeling organized and in control.
Hmm, that actually makes sense. If I start the day feeling good, maybe I'll be more motivated to tackle those bigger tasks.
You got it. And remember, it's about finding what works for you.
Right, right.
What might be a keystone habit for one person might not be for another.
That's true. So it's all about experimenting and seeing what makes a difference.
Exactly. Think of it as a journey of discovering your best self.
I like that. So we've covered so much today. The habit loop, mindset, environment tracking, keystone habits, and all those strategies. It's a lot to take in.
It is. But remember, you have all this knowledge now to help you make real changes.
Yeah, I feel like I have a whole new toolbox for building better habits.
And don't forget, it's not about being perfect, it's about making progress.
Right, progress over perfection.
Celebrate those small wins along the way and enjoy the process.
I'm definitely feeling more inspired and ready to put all this into practice.
That's great to hear. It's been such a pleasure exploring this with you.
Same here. And thank you, dear listener, for sharing these amazing sources with us.
Absolutely. Your curiosity is what makes this so much fun.
Well, that's about it for today's deep dive.
Until next time.
Keep learning, keep growing, and keep those good habits going strong.